Blind Date was one of the most successful Saturday night shows in British TV history, running for an incredible 18 years in its original run through the 80s, 90s and early 2000s, and becoming a staple of weekend entertainment for millions. Hosted by Cilla Black, the show combined light-hearted humor, romance, big personalities, and a healthy dose of innuendo, all wrapped up in a format that was both simple and fun. 3 hidden contestants, 1 single dater, and a whole lot of playful banter. The show produced many memorable moments throughout the years, including Alex and Sue, who met on an episode in 1988 and subsequently got married a few years later, and contestant David, who went on a holiday to Nepal on his own when his date no-showed the trip. Blind Date also featured several contestants who would later become household names, including Amanda Holden, Nikki Graham, Mark Spate, and interestingly, comedian Ed Byrne appeared on the show in one of his first television appearances. But in January 1998, one of the most memorable episodes of Blind Date was broadcast, with millions tuning in as Cilla revealed that one of the contestants taking part wasn't actually a genuine contestant. In fact, she was an undercover journalist who had applied to be on the show under false pretenses to report on what it was really like behind the scenes. Her goal was to lift the lid on the production process, from how contestants were chosen to whether the dates were truly spontaneous. But things didn't quite go to plan, and in this video we'll take a brief look at the origins and history of Blind Date before reliving this memorable episode. This is the 3rd episode of the 90s Rewind. Before we start, make sure to hit that like button and please subscribe to the channel. Blind Date began its life under the name It's a Hoot, and an untelevised pilot was recorded in early 1985, presented by comedian Duncan Norvell. It's not clear how many episodes of this were recorded, but in these clips shown on a 2004 documentary called Who Killed Saturday Night TV, Duncan says, "Welcome to It's a Hoot for the 2nd week," which suggests perhaps more than one pilot was filmed with Duncan as host. Another pilot was filmed shortly after this, with Cilla Black taking on the role of host, a role she would go on to hold for almost 20 years. This pilot was again initially untelevised, but clips were broadcast years later during what appears to be a special episode of Blind Date. The format of the show was relatively simple. Each week, 1 man and 1 woman would be introduced to 3 women and 3 men respectively, where they would ask each of them 3 questions. The contestants couldn't see their potential blind date partners and could only hear them, and based on their responses to the questions, the contestants would choose one to go on a blind date with. Each episode would see both pairs sent on a blind date, with the location selected at random from a number of envelopes, and we would check in with the pairs from the previous episode to see how their dates went. This format remained largely unchanged for the show's entire run, at least until the final few series, but that consistency was actually part of its charm. Despite very few changes to the structure over the years, audiences kept coming back for more. That same dependable formula, mixed with a bit of cheeky banter and the unpredictability of human chemistry, helped Blind Date become a Saturday night staple. Of course, a big part of that success came down to one person, Cilla Black. She wasn't just the host, she was the heart of the show. With her warm humor, sharp wit, and genuine affection for the contestants, Cilla struck the perfect balance between matchmaker and mischief maker, and had a unique ability to put people at ease, tease just the right amount, and create moments that felt both hilarious and heartfelt. At the same time, she was also presenting other hugely popular shows like Surprise Surprise and The Moment of Truth, cementing her status as one of the most beloved faces on British television, and making her the highest paid female performer on British television at the time. The original run of Blind Date came to an end in May of 2003, its 18th series. Midway through that series, the show started to be broadcast live in an effort to improve ratings, and during the very first of these episodes, on January 4th, 2003, Cilla would announce her planned departure from the show at the end of the series, something that came as a bit of a surprise to the production crew who had not been told of this in advance.
It is a very special live show because this is going to be my very last series of Blind Date.
Cilla would eventually reveal that she had decided to leave the show as it was becoming too tiring and stressful, and she wasn't keen on the new ditch or date format that had been introduced in the final series. It was hard to imagine Blind Date ever working without her, but that didn't stop the show making a comeback on Channel 5 between 2017 and 2019, hosted by Paul O'Grady. And despite performing well in the ratings to begin with, the show quickly lost viewers and was eventually cancelled after just over 30 episodes. Over nearly 2 decades, Blind Date produced hundreds of episodes, but amongst all of those memorable moments, one episode in particular stands out as one of the most controversial and unforgettable in the show's history. So let's now take a closer look at that infamous episode where an undercover journalist managed to slip onto the show only to be dramatically exposed. The story of Nicola and Paul took place over the course of 2 episodes in January 1998. The first episode in which Nicola and Paul first meet each other and go off on their date, and the following week's episode where we see how their date went and the revelations are made. The first episode kicks off with Cilla introducing the 3 fellas available as potential blind date options for Nicola: Michael from Berkshire, Alan from Torquay, and Paul from Nottingham. We learn that number 1, Michael, is a maintenance engineer in a private hospital, and he has a message for everyone out there: bald is best. He claims that all the girls love to touch his head, and Cilla takes up his offer to go in for a stroke.
Away. It's doing things that no other head's ever done to me before.
Number 2, Alan, is currently a law student, and he shares with us the rather peculiar way he chats up the girls, by doing impressions of a piranha and a shark. Then we come to number 3, Paul, who works as an account manager in communications. Paul says he is obsessive and tells us all about how he prepares for the week ahead every Sunday by locking the doors of his house, taking the phone off the hook, and preparing his wardrobe. He irons 5 white shirts in advance and hangs them in his wardrobe with a separate tie for each day. Paul claims to also be just as obsessive about girls, hoping for a girl who is smart and a good laugh. Cilla then heads back to the other side of the divide and introduces Nicola from London, who works as a temp and enjoys travelling. We of course already know that that's not her real job, but Cilla, the audience, and everyone watching at home were none the wiser. Nicola takes her seat and tells us a bit about the kind of man she's looking for, noting that she is a Taurus and she would like to meet a Virgo, which it just so happens Paul revealed himself to be just moments earlier.
Astrologically, he's a Virgo because he's down to...
The questioning then begins, and the first question from Nicola to the lads is that when she was 6, she wanted to be a nun, and she wants to know what the lads wanted to be when they were kids and what made them change their mind. We get the usual innuendo-laden responses from the lads, the best of which was probably from number 1, Michael.
Well, when I was younger, I really fancied running my own barbers. But I soon realised I didn't quite have the head for it. But I'm sure if you picked me tonight, I'd make your hair curl.
For question 2, Nicola says that when she plays Monopoly, she always wants to be Mayfair because it's classy and highly desirable. She wants to know which Monopoly board property the lads would be, and I think Paul had the best answer for this one.
Well, Nicola, I think I'd be Piccadilly. Because, like me, it comes alive at night.
The third and final question relates to travel, as Nicola wants to know where the lads would take her on holiday, and Michael once again comes out with a cracker.
I also love to travel, especially when I'm on skis. So I'd take you down to the South America, the Andes, and I'd show you just how Andy I am.
With the questions complete, it's now time for Nicola to choose which guy she wants to go on a blind date with, and as we know, she selects number 3, Paul. The 2 she turned down then make their way around the divide to say their goodbyes before the big reveal, and both Nicola and Paul seem quite happy.
Come in, Paul!
Nicola selects the destination for their date, hoping for somewhere hot and lovely, and the card reveals that they're going to the Isle of Skye. There's laughter in the audience at this, as the Isle of Skye definitely isn't a warm destination, but as a Scotsman I can tell you that Skye is a beautiful place to visit. Nicola and Paul then head up the stairs and away on their blind date. Let's now jump to the following week's episode where Nicola and Paul return to the show to tell us all about how their date went. They flew in by helicopter over the beautiful scenery of Skye, took a bike ride to a local distillery to sample some whiskey, and sailed out to observe the seals resting on the shore. It looks like a great date, to be honest. We then come back to the studio where we get the usual interview clips with Nicola and Paul talking about what they thought of each other before returning to the sofa for Cilla's big surprise. Perhaps this is the wrong show. From their interviews and the chat on the sofa, it appears that there isn't any chemistry between the pair, and Cilla suspects it may be because Paul isn't spontaneous enough for Nicola, to which Nicola says she likes surprises. Well, brace yourself, Nicola, because this is probably going to be the biggest surprise of your life.
Well, Nicola, I have to say I've got more than a big surprise for you. Because I know what you're at. You don't work as a temporary secretary. I know for a fact that you're an undercover journalist and you work for Cosmopolitan magazine. She's a journalist, ladies and gentlemen, not a blind dater at all.
Paul looks in utter disbelief at this news, and just to prove it, Cilla shows him Nicola's name in Cosmopolitan magazine. Cilla then asks Nicola if she has a boyfriend, and she answers no, but it was later discovered that she was in fact engaged to be married, and this was flashed across the bottom of the screen for the viewers at home. The audience in the studio don't seem best pleased with Nicola. Cilla continues to press Nicola on why she did it, but she gives nothing away and simply says she had a great time, she's sorry, and that Paul is a lovely guy. Once again, the audience as well as Cilla don't seem to impress with her, and with that, the episode comes to an end. Nicola revealed her side of the story in a 2017 interview with Emma Barnett on the BBC podcast Eye of the Storm. We learned that she didn't actually work at Cosmopolitan magazine when she first auditioned for Blind Date, and instead was able to secure the job by mentioning her progress through the audition process for the show in the interview. Nicola had to keep her identity secret for about 18 months, as that's how long the audition process lasted, and when the show was to be recorded, Nicola had just transferred to work as a freelance producer at GMTV, which was filmed in the same building as Blind Date, adding even more pressure to the situation. The podcast is very interesting and is definitely well worth a listen. But how did the show actually find out that Nicola was in fact an undercover journalist? Well, it transpired that someone who worked at Hearst, the parent company of Cosmopolitan magazine, was at a party shortly before the second episode was to be filmed and spilled the beans to one of the producers of Blind Date who just happened to be at the same party. If it wasn't for this, perhaps Nicola would have gotten away with it. Nicola's article about her experience was published in the December 1997 issue of Cosmopolitan, 1 month before the events aired on television, in which she claimed that researchers on the show heavily suggested and hinted at which partners contestants should choose, that the questions were seen in advance, and that holidays were reserved weeks before. I think we all know that there was a certain amount of scripting going on this show, so some of these revelations aren't really that much of a surprise. However, not long after Nicola's Cosmopolitan article was published, in the December 7th issue of Sunday World, an Irish newspaper, an article was published by journalist Esther McCarthy, which was apparently a kiss and tell from Paul titled "I Bonked Blind Date Cheat," where he claims to have had a 3-month affair with Nicola after the show was recorded. The article goes into quite a bit of detail about their alleged relationship after the show, where it's claimed that things started to get quite serious. Whether these claims are true or not, I'll let you be the judge of that, as we all know we can't always trust what's written in tabloid newspapers. But it certainly adds another interesting layer to an already fascinating story. In the end, Paul and Nicola went their separate ways, but their time on Blind Date remains one of the most unforgettable moments in the show, and a true standout moment in the history of 90s television. Many thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this look back at probably the most famous episode of Blind Date and the third episode of the 90s Rewind. Were you a fan of the show back in the 80s, 90s and early 2000s? Would you have gone on Blind Date if given the chance? Please share your thoughts and memories of the show in the comments below. Don't forget to give the video a like, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, it would mean the world if you could. Thanks again, and see you in the next one.